the Investor Connect podcast program. This is Hall T. Martin. I'm the host of the show, in which we interview angel investors, venture capital, private equity, family offices, and many other investor groups for startups and growth companies. I hope you enjoy this episode. Thank you for joining us. Well, hello, this is Hall Martin with Investor Connect. Today we're here with Laura Baldwin of Golden Seeds. Laura, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
So what was your background before investing in early stage companies? What did you do before this?
So I have a BA degree from UT, and then I also have an MBA from SNU. And I started out after college in New York, and I worked in investment banking for a couple of years, and then equity research for 3 years after that. And then I moved back to Dallas, and I worked for a hospital management company, publicly traded, Fortune 500. And I worked in corporate finance and was also head of investor relations there. And then I'm currently president of Waco Bend Asset Management, which is a family office I have with my father, and we manage his investments. And then I'm also very involved with Golden Seeds, which is a national angel network with about 275 members. And we invest in women-owned and women-led companies.
Well, that's great. So what excites you right now?
I think there are lots of different things that excite me. I think just generally in terms of women entrepreneurs, we're seeing a lot more women entrepreneurs these days with some really great companies, and we're seeing some progress in terms of them getting funding. In terms of the sectors, there are really a lot of them. I think FinTech is kind of exploding right now. We're seeing lots of FinTech companies, and I know of some FinTech funds that are starting. I think cybersecurity is another interesting area. On the tech side, I've seen some good AI companies, some VR, also some SaaS companies. Retail technology, I think is pretty interesting. Healthcare, IoT, and then some consumer products, or consumer area, some just traditional products that you've seen in the past, and then also some that have more of a tech focus.
Well, great. So for those investors out there, what's your advice for them before investing in startups? What do you advise them to do first before they write that check?
Well, I would say, first of all, that you really need to get to know the entrepreneur. When you meet them, I think sometimes you may have a connection or you have a good sense of who they are. You need to make sure that they're passionate about what they're doing. And again, you can pretty much figure that out as soon as you meet them. You want to be able to trust them because they're going to be spending your money and you're going to be owning a stake in that company. I think you need to have really good lines of communication, make sure that you're communicating regularly. And I'm a huge proponent of investor updates. You can do those quarterly or semi-annually, whatever you think. And some companies think it takes time to put those together, but I think you can just put a brief email together, and I think that works fine. I think you've really got to do your due diligence. And in terms of the key issues, you've got to make sure they can answer, what is your business? Do you have a clear value proposition? How are you going to generate revenue? What's your go-to-market strategy? What's the size of the market and the opportunity? What does the competitive landscape look like? How many other competitors are there, and what sets you apart from them? You may have some IP, depending on what kind of company you are. Financial projections. I think this is very important. As a finance person, I'm always interested in this, and I know a lot of companies don't like to do this, or they say that they don't want to spend the time, or that they're concerned about the accuracy of the projections. And my view is you need to put something together. And as you know, as an investor, it's going to be wrong. But we all, as investors, we know that, and we just want to see something and see how you're generating those projections and what are the assumptions behind that. I think management team is very important. The founder's background and also that of the other co-founders or key team members. Fundraising. This is key. I think a lot of times companies, they're not sure how much they need. And so they either ask for too little or too much. And so I think it's important to really look at your cash burn and look at how much you really need and how long that's going to take, how long that's going to last you. And I think that they underestimate how long it's going to take to fundraise in terms of talking to investors, beginning those conversations and getting the check, and also how time consuming it is and how it can take away from your time running the company. And also, what's your exit strategy? I think it's very important to at least start thinking about that and have some ideas about who might be potential acquirers.
Very good. So what's your advice for people running startups? What should they do to prepare for the fundraise?
Well, I think a lot of what I just said applies in terms of knowing the answers to all of those questions. And I think one of the things that you kind of hear differing views about is sometimes you hear people say, well, you need to make sure that you can afford to quit your job. Do you have enough money because you're not going to be receiving a salary? And then I've heard other people say, well, you might as well go all in and just do this full time. So I think that you need to make sure that you can do this because you're not going to be receiving a salary for a while. And so maybe this is something you do, I'm not saying your spare time, but outside of your full-time job. I think one of the things that's key is your investors. And not all investors are the same. And so you might be tempted to take the first check that someone offers you. But I think it's important to meet with the investor and make sure that you're on the same page and that they want the same things that you do, because all investors are not the same.
Well, great. So let's talk about the state of investing, in particular in women-led startups. How is that industry evolving and what changes do you see going on there?
Well, we've made a lot of progress there, but there's still a lot of room to go. We're seeing a lot more women entrepreneurs. As of 2018, the estimate was that there were over 12 million women-owned businesses in the U.S. And between 2007 and 2018, that number increased 58% compared to 12% among all startups. And then in 2005, women entrepreneurs represented less than 3% of all companies receiving startup capital. And as of last year, they represented 20%. Now, those are still very small percentages, and there's still a long way to go. But I think we're happy with the progress that we're seeing. And then another thing, and this is a pretty good statistic, I think we've seen this pretty well published. It's been shown that companies that have at least one woman on the board or in the C-suite tend to outperform companies that don't. So I think it's another reason to invest in women-led companies.
So what's your investment thesis for these companies? What do you look for to make a decision, and what's your criteria?
So for Golden Seeds, we invest in women-owned and women-led companies. And that means either a female founder, co-founder, or someone in the C-suite. It doesn't have to be an all-female management team. In fact, as I mentioned, we do look for that diversity. And just as an aside, Golden Seeds does not have all female members. About 10 to 15% of our members are male. So in terms of the sectors, we invest in B2B and B2C technology, healthcare, and consumer products. And we've got a full list of our investment criteria on our website. But just to give you some key ones, you need to have a scalable business model, an addressable market of at least 500 million, a product or service in beta that's been created with input from your clients or potential clients, and proof of concept revenue or some kind of pilot, unless you're a healthcare biopharma company, and a plausible exit strategy within 5 to 8 years, and typical valuation at first funding below 5 million, although I think that's flexible because we've seen valuations climbing in recent years. And then typically looking for a first round of funding of $250,000 to $2 million. And just talking about Golden Seeds, we've invested $120 million in over 170 companies since we were founded in 2005.
Is there a particular portfolio that you can call out as a good example of a startup investment for the Golden Seeds?
I think we've got a lot of promising ones. I think one I'd like to mention is called Cognition RX, and they are focused on coming up with a cure for Alzheimer's, and they're in their second round of clinical trials, but this one shows a lot of promise. The chief scientific officer, Dr. Susan Catalano, is extremely impressive, and we're just really excited about what the company is doing.
Very good. So what are the challenges that a women-led startup faces out there these days? Is it regulatory? Is it market? Is it technical? Or is it otherwise?
I think it's really access to capital. And I don't want to sound like a broken record, but I think that really is the issue. We are seeing progress here in terms of getting investment from VCs and getting more meetings with those VCs. In terms of seeing progress, there have been quite a lot of pitch competitions solely for women. And so I think it's been good to increase the awareness of how many great women entrepreneurs are out there and how many great companies they're creating, especially in high tech and high growth spaces. Although, having said that, I will be glad when we don't have to have these separate pitch competitions just for women.
Great. Are there any particular sectors or applications out there that you think are good immediate opportunities for investors to pursue in this space?
Yeah, it's hard because, as I mentioned earlier, there are so many great sectors, but I think FinTech is probably the biggest opportunity that I would highlight. And then I think the cybersecurity and then AI VR spaces.
Well, great. Well, in the last few minutes that we have here, what else should we cover that we haven't?
Well, so one thing I just want to mention, just a plug for Golden Seeds. We have a monthly office hours here in Dallas, and we meet with women-owned and women-led companies. They meet with our members and we give them feedback. And it's companies at any stage. You don't have to meet our investment criteria. We see mostly really early stage companies. And what we do is meet with them and give them feedback. It's a very informal, friendly environment, but it doesn't include any decisions about funding. And so we see up to 4 companies a month on a first come, first served basis. And the information is on our website, which is www.goldenseeds.com.
Well, great. Well, how best for listeners to get back in touch with you?
You can find me on LinkedIn under Laura Baldwin and president at Waco Bend Asset Management.
Well, great. We'll put those in the show notes. I want to thank you for joining us today and hope to have you back for a follow-up soon.
Great. Thanks for having me.
Investor Connect helps investors interested in startup funding. In this podcast series, experienced investors share their experience and advice. You can learn more at investorconnect.org. Paul T. Martin is the director of Investor Connect, which is a 501c3 nonprofit dedicated to the education of investors for early-stage funding. All opinions expressed by Hall and podcast guests are solely their own opinions and do not reflect the opinion of Investor Connect. This podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be relied upon as a basis for investment decisions.